Alright, back, episode 2 of the UPSC vlog podcast, whatever the hell you want to call it. I really don't know at this point, and I don't really care too much, but just got back from BC. Gonna talk a quick bit about life recharges, life resets, if you will. Before I left, I was speaking to a friend of mine, Anil, who's also a strength coach over at Twist Performance in Richmond Hill, and he had just gotten back from a cruise. And he was talking about, how everybody, I think, deserves a vacation. And, we were just talking about how, it's just that time away to reset, recalibrate, come back and go hard and be motivated, get back on the grind. But there's nothing to say that you can't relax a little bit, nothing to say you can't reset, recharge, so you can come back and rebuild stronger than ever. But got back and had a conversation with a parent of one of the athletes I work with. That kind of sparked something, a topic I wanted to discuss a little bit, hopefully get a little bit of feedback from some people as well, maybe some other coaches. But basically one of my athletes, he had went down to a physiotherapist and just to get assessed, see where his body's at, basically see his movement capacity and what he needs to work on, his weak links, that type of stuff. And along the lines, he had, I'm going to leave out the details of his, assessment, so to speak, but along the lines, the physiotherapist had dropped a line to my athlete and his dad about how the game itself, hockey, so this is a hockey player, the game itself is transitioning into more of a speed and skill, obviously, but a speed and explosive game, which is not wrong. However, he started recommending, some strength coaches and some trainers that, their training is now transitioning into more speed and explosive work, and that's not wrong either, and it has its place in training. However, and I had to speak up and mention this to my athlete's parent, just because without a base level of strength, you cannot achieve, optimally at least, the amount of power that you would want to actually get a training adaptation from explosive training and power training. It's just the things that have been working for years now with athletes and with strength and conditioning coaches back in the 50s and 60s. What they did to get strong and fast and explosive still works. It still works today. Guess what? Nothing has changed. You just need to apply it properly. I don't understand when you go and I'm to blame too. Sometimes you get fallen into the trap of Instagram and just watching and seeing what people are doing. You're like, oh shit, I gotta do what that guy's doing. If I want to keep my athletes happy or I want to keep my clients happy, that's what we got to do. But at the end of the day, it might not be sexy. It might not be the most glamorous thing you're gonna see in a gym, but the basics do work, right? And they've worked for years, like I just said. And there's a lot of research that back it up, and obviously it needs to be individualized to a point where not everybody's going to be able to do the same things. And that's where our job, that's where we come into play. That's where we need to be able to assess on the fly and be able to adapt the application of our exercise selection. You have to look at things from, I always look at strength and conditioning from like a house, right? If you don't have that foundation built, the house is not going to be able to, it might look nice for a little while, but it's not going to be able to stand or withstand, whether there's an earthquake or whatever it might be. If the foundation cracks, there's a lot of issues that happen to the house. And that's the exact same thing with an athlete. If you don't have a solid foundation, and let me tell you, strength and mobility, so strength and movement, those are the foundation. If you don't have the base level of strength to perform some of these power exercises that I see on Instagram or I'm sure other people are seeing out there in gyms, you're actually going to cause a lot more damage than get anything good out of it in the long run. If kids aren't able to land properly, why are you going to make them do 100 jumps within a 1 minute span? I might be exaggerating, but there's proper application of plyometrics that gets misunderstood in this industry. You cannot, and I repeat, you cannot, and this is just an example, Tabata is not, you cannot mix Tabata with plyometrics. If some of you guys are familiar with Tabata is pretty much like if you're going on and off for about whatever it might be, 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off, high intensity interval training. Joe DeFranco just spoke about this on one of his recent podcasts, actually, where it's high intensity needs a lot of recovery, and I'm not going to go into that, but it's the same premise when it comes to power, when it comes to explosion, when it comes to plyometric training. You need that ample amount of rest between your sets to actually get a training adaptation out of it. If you're not getting that rest, or if you're doing too much jumps within a session, it's going to lead to injury, it's going to lead to overcompensation, imbalances, and ultimately that's not good. All of those things are negative. You need to take the proper approach to training for power and for training for explosion. And that comes down to honestly having that base level of strength. If you do not have that base level of strength, you're going to, strength and movement obviously, you're not going to be able to achieve the optimal power improvements that you want. But that's what we're going to talk about now, or that's what we basically wanted to talk about this podcast episode, get it off my chest a little bit, and just kind of spread some knowledge about how to really train for power. And an example of it, I'm going to give you a quick example, I guess. I personally like contrast training. Cal Dietz, he really goes into detail with that stuff, but where you're giving the athlete that base level of strength with some sort of compound movement. Let's take, for example, let's just use very simple bench press. You're trying to improve your bench press strength. You're trying to improve your 1 rep max, or in most cases, I don't like to test 1 rep max, but let's say 5 rep max. You're trying to improve your 5 rep max in the bench while also improving your med ball throw. This is let's say for a football player, for example, who has to test their med ball throw. At some point in the year, they'll be testing that med ball throw. So say they want to improve that plyometric, that power, the upper body power you're getting from a med ball throw. An exercise, or the exercises that I would choose, if we're doing bench press and we're trying to improve our 1 rep max, maybe we're doing some clusters with the bench, and we're supersetting that with some sort of a med ball throw variation. At that point, you're going to get high activation after doing your bench press into getting optimal power production when you're doing your med ball throw. So that's just an example of how you could optimize your power production. And then after that, make sure you take your adequate rest. 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes of rest between those two exercises. And again, you contrast them, go back to back to get a better effect out of the power exercise, to produce more force at the end of the day. But yeah, that's basically all we wanted to talk about today. Hopefully it was insightful, and we'll check you back at the next episode coming up soon. Thanks.